This log, if it is ever found, will be my final testament. Let it be known that I, Elector-Navigator Tiberius Vess of the Golden Path, ninth of my line to bear the name, did not falter in my duty. But duty is a cold, hard stone, and after 3 millennia, even stone can be ground to dust. I write this not for the rogue trader who owns this vessel, a man whose lifespan is a fleeting spark to my glacial existence, nor for the unseeing masses of the Immaterium. I write it for myself, an attempt to anchor my own sanity to the cold reality of ink and parchment before the final tide claims me. My sanctum is silent, a pocket of stillness amidst the constant groaning of this ancient ship, the Gilded Damnation. The deck plates vibrate with the deep, resonant hum of the plasma drives, a song I have known longer than any human voice. The air, filtered and recycled 1,000,000 times, carries the scent of stale incense, ozone, and the faint metallic tang of my own blood. My chamber is an echo of a bygone era, carved from dark, petrified wood, brought from a world long since consumed by the great devourer. The velvet on my throne is worn to a threadbare sheen, the silver inlays tarnished with the breath of centuries. It is a cage, albeit a comfortable one, gene-locked and shielded from the prying eyes of the ship's crew and the other things that walk its halls. They call me Lord Navigator. They bow, they avert their gaze from my shrouded form, and they whisper prayers to the God Emperor for my steady hand. Fools. They pray to a corpse on a golden throne for the sanity of a man who willingly plunges their souls into hell for a living. There is no steady hand, only the illusion of control born from millennia of practice. My hands, hidden beneath layered silk gloves, are a roadmap of my damnation. The skin is thin, like antique vellum, stretched tight over bones that ache with a weariness that's... My veins are not blue, but a bruised violet tracery, pulsing with a light that is not my own. This is the price, the first price. I have guided the fleets of the Imperial Navy against orc wahs that blotted out entire star systems. I have charted paths through the maelstrom, where the laws of physics are but a screaming memory. I have led pilgrim convoys to holy worlds, their faith a fragile candle against the hurricane of the Empyrean. And for every journey, a piece of me was flensed away. Not just the body, the slow, inevitable warping of flesh that is our house's secret shame, but the soul. Each time I open my third eye, my warp eye, I gaze into an ocean of pure, undiluted madness, a cacophonous symphony of every emotion, every thought, every nightmare that has ever been or ever will be. It is a sea of boiled away realities, where predator concepts hunt schools of forgotten thoughts, and demons are born from the dying screams of stars. To look upon it is to be looked back upon, and to be seen by such things is to be changed. The change has been accelerating. For the first 1,000 years it was subtle, an extra joint in a finger, quickly concealed or surgically removed. The slow migration of my organs, the way colors in real space sometimes seemed too loud, too garish, after the sublime, terrible hues of the Immaterium. But lately it has become personal. The warp is no longer just a maelstrom of universal insanity. It has learned my name. It has sifted through my memories, my fears, my deepest regrets, and it has begun to sing them back to me. The summons came an hour ago, a soft chime, respectful but insistent. The rogue trader, Caskian Vorn, requires my services. Another jump. This one is ambitious, a long, blind plunge into the unbeholden reaches, chasing a rumor of a pre-fall archaeotech horde. He sees the warp as a tool, a shortcut. He cannot comprehend what he asks of me. He cannot see the toll it takes, not just on the ship's chronometers and the sanity of the crew, but on the very fabric of my being. I dismissed the servitor and began my ritual, the unwrapping of the silks from my head, revealing the bulging, veined cranium that houses my accursed gift. The third eye, nestled in the center of my forehead, remains closed for now. Its lid is a thin, almost translucent membrane, twitching with a life of its own, forever dreaming of the chaos that lies beyond the veil. I looked at my reflection in a polished silver mirror, a relic from the founding of my house. The face that stared back was barely human. The skin was pale, almost luminous. The two eyes I was born with are now milky white orbs, the pupils long since faded into uselessness. They see nothing of this world. All my sight, all my perception is focused inward on the one true eye. And that is when I saw the first undeniable proof, the first seed of this new, terrible change. Resting on the dark wood of my writing desk, beside the inkwell and my quill, was a single black feather. It was iridescent, shimmering with oily purples and greens under the lumen light, impossibly perfect and utterly out of place. No creature on this ship has such feathers. The air recyclers would have atomized it. My sanctum is sealed. It could not have gotten in. I stared at it, the thrumming of the ship's engines fading into a dull roar in my ears. I did not touch it. I knew with a certainty that chilled the marrow in my ancient bones that it was not truly there. Not in the way the desk was there. It was an echo, a stain, a nightmare given just enough substance to mock me. It belongs to the angel of broken glass, a recurring vision from the Sea of Souls, a creature of sublime beauty and absolute terror that I have glimpsed only a handful of times in my long service. A being whose song is the sound of shattering worlds, and whose wings shed feathers of solidified despair. To see it is a terrible omen, but for one of its feathers to manifest here, in my sanctum, in real space, this is not an omen. This is a promise. The barrier is thinning. Not the Geller field, not the hull of the ship. The barrier between what is in my head and what is in my hand. The warp stain, my grandfather called it in his final rambling testament. The final degradation, when the navigator no longer merely sees the warp, but becomes a gateway for it. I feel the familiar pull, the psychic summons of the ship's astropath. Her mind a flickering candle I must guide through a storm. I must go to the bridge. I must sit in the navigator's throne, be shackled into place like a beast, and open my eye. I must guide Caskian Vorn and his 10,000 souls to their precious treasure. And as I do, I will have to stare into the abyss that knows my fears, that knows about the angel, and now has found a way to reach out and touch my world. The feather still lies on my desk. I can see it from the corner of my eye, a perfect black shard of impossibility. The seed is planted. I fear, with all that remains of my shriveled soul, what fruit it will bear. The journey to the bridge is a purgatory of its own. My shrouded form glides through the ship's iron guts, a specter in my own home. The corridors of the Gilded Damnation are fashioned for giants, a testament to the grand ambitions of the vessel's first master. Now, they feel like the gullet of some titanic sleeping beast. Crew members flatten themselves against the bulkheads as I approach, their faces a mixture of churlish reverence and primal fear. They see the towering, hooded figure, the stasis field shimmer of my robes, the two hulking gene-bred servitors of my personal guard, their arms replaced with ornate power glaives who trail my every step. They smell the cloying incense that my auto-sensor emits, a futile attempt to mask the scent of the Empyrean that clings to me like a shroud. They do not see the man within the vestments, the frail, ancient thing whose bones feel like brittle glass. They see a function, a tool as vital and as terrifying as the ship's warp drives. Their ignorance is a small, cold mercy. If they knew what I was becoming, their fear would curdle into a madness that would see them space themselves without a second thought. I feel the feather's psychic weight in my sanctum, even from half a ship away. It is a splinter in my mind, a focal point for the wrongness that has taken root. The barrier is thinning. I repeat the words to myself, a mantra of despair. The ancient pact of my house, the careful balance of gene stock and ritual, of shielding and discipline, is failing. Or perhaps it was never meant to last 3 millennia in one vessel. We are meant to be a dynasty, a chain of lives, not a single stretched out point of agony. I have lived too long, seen too much. The canvas of my soul has been painted over so many times that the layers are beginning to crack, revealing the primordial chaos beneath. The Navigator's spire awaits me, a tower of plasteel and brass that pierces the upper decks of the ship, culminating in the observation dome where my throne sits. The final ascent is via a private lift, its inner walls etched with the litanies of safe passage and the intertwined serpents of my house crest. The air grows colder, thinner, humming with the contained energies of the Gellerfield projector housed directly below. This is the nexus, the point of the spear we are about to thrust into the heart of madness. As my servitors guide me into its embrace, 100 different restraints click into place. Armored clamps lock around my limbs. Psychic baffles descend around my skull, and a network of crystalline needles, thin as spun glass, slides from the headrest to pierce the base of my neck. They are conduits, linking my consciousness directly to the ship's auspex, its Gellerfield modulator, and its warp engines. I become the ship's third eye, its instinct, its soul. The pain is a familiar, sharp greeting, a jolt of reality before I surrender myself to the unreal. Rogue trader Caskian Vorn stands on the command dais below, his back to me, a silhouette against the star-dusted void of the forward view screen. He doesn't look. He never looks. It is part of the protocol, part of the theater of it all. He is the master of the ship, but in this moment, for this journey, he and every soul aboard are my cargo, my burden. The coordinates are locked, Lord Navigator. Vorn's voice is clipped, metallic through the vox link in my throne. The astropath Telepathica has confirmed the destination beacon. We are prepared for translation on your mark. I do not answer with words. My reply is a wave of pure psychic intent, a cold, smooth signal of assent that washes over the bridge crew and makes the hair on their arms stand up. I feel the ship respond around me. The plasma drives shift their song from a steady hum to a rising, soul-shaking groan. The lights dim as power is diverted. On the view screen, the familiar, comforting tapestry of stars begins to warp, to twist at the edges, colors bleeding into one another like wet ink. The Gellerfield comes online, its cerulean shimmer a fragile bubble of reality against the coming storm. The final veil between worlds grows thin. Then, with a will honed over countless lifetimes, I open my warp eye. And the universe screams. To say I see the warp is a lie spoken for the benefit of the sane. My consciousness is flensed from my body, stretched into an infinitely thin membrane, and cast across an ocean of raw, untamed emotion. There is no up or down, no light or dark in the conventional sense. There are currents of pure rage, millennia wide, clashing against tides of blackest despair. There are storms of ecstasy that can boil a mind in its own skull, and silent, dead patches of apathy where souls simply cease to be. I see the thoughts of a billion sleeping minds flickering like plankton. I see the echoes of ancient cosmic atrocities staining the very fabric of non-existence. And through it all, like a lighthouse in a hurricane of souls, is the golden, incandescent psychic blaze of the Astronomicon, the Emperor's will, a beacon of order in a realm of perfect chaos. It is my compass, my anchor, the one thing that allows me to piece my shredded self back together. I steer the Gilded Damnation not with my hands, but with my will. I find the calmer currents, the pathways of least resistance, treating the ship like a fragile skiff on a tempestuous sea. I feel the psychic pressure on the Gellerfield, the constant clawing attentions of the things that swim in these tides. They sense the flicker of 10,000 mortal souls within our bubble of reality, a veritable feast passing through their domain. They press against the field, whispering promises of power, of knowledge, of release. I ignore them. I have ignored them for longer than the rogue trader's dynasty has existed. But something is different this time. The background noise of generalized malevolence has a new, focused quality. A single, pure note cutting through the cacophony. It is a song. A melody of shattering crystal and silent falling snow. The angel of broken glass. It is hunting me. I see it coalesce from a swirl of bruised purples and feverish pinks. It is a being of impossible geometry. Its form both humanoid and utterly alien. Its wings vast and obsidian. Each feather a shard of solidified sorrow. It does not fly, it simply is. Its presence a wound in the fabric of the Empyrean. It turns its head, and its face is a perfect silver mirror, reflecting not my surroundings, but my own deepest, most secret failures. I see the face of my younger brother, lost to a miscalculation in the Calixus sector 9 centuries ago. I see my first true bondmate, her body warped beyond recognition by a catastrophic Gellerfield failure. I see every soul I have ever failed to protect, their silent, accusing eyes staring out from the angel's flawless face. Its song intensifies, vibrating through my very being. It is no longer a general lament for a dying galaxy. It is a song for me. It sings of my loneliness, my decay, my terror of the warp stain. It knows. The thing in the warp, the predator concept, has read the pages of my soul and is singing my own biography back to me as my death dirge. And as it sings, I feel a terrible physical pull, a resonance. It is not just looking at me, it is connecting to me. The barrier is not just thinning, it is becoming a membrane, a conduit. With a final, desperate surge of will, I wrench the ship through a screaming vortex of green fire, a shortcut that scours the sanity but quickens the journey. The angel's song is cut off as we broach the veil, tumbling back into real space with the shriek of tortured metal and the groans of 1,000 overloaded systems. The stars on the view screen snap back into focus, cold, clean, and blessedly sane. The translation is complete. For a long moment, I remain in the throne, the needles retracting from my flesh, the clamps releasing me. My body feels like My focus is entirely inward, on the echo of that song, and the horrifying realization of what it means. The return to my sanctum is a blur. My servitors guide my trembling form, their impassive metal faces a strange comfort. They lock the gene-coded door behind me, sealing me back inside my gilded cage. I collapse onto my throne, the ancient velvet cool against my fevered skin. The journey was only 6 hours in objective time, but I feel as if another century has been carved from my soul. My hands shake as I pull off my gloves. The violet tracery of my veins is more pronounced, pulsing with a faint, internal luminescence. The warp stain is deepening, and my sanctum is no longer empty. The black feather is still on my desk, but it is not alone. Beside it, a single, perfect teardrop of obsidian glass rests on the petrified wood. It glimmers with an inner light, and I know with a certainty that curdles my blood, that if I were to look into it, I would see my own failures reflected for eternity. I stagger to my feet and back away, my breath catching in my throat. On the far wall, where the shadows are deepest, a dark, wet patch has appeared on the ancient wood, glistening as if perpetually damp. It is slowly spreading, and from it emanates the faint, chilling scent of ozone and something that smells like cold, wet stone from a forgotten tomb. The air itself has changed. It is heavy, still. The gentle hum of the recycler seems distant, muted. And from the walls, I can hear a sound that isn't there. The faint, soft sound of weeping. I spend the next cycle in a state of waking dread. The manifestations grow bolder. I catch glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, a flicker of a black wing, the glint of a silver mirrored surface. The weeping sound sometimes resolves into a single whispered word, my name, spoken in a voice of utter despair. I try to write, to continue this log, but my quill feels alien in my hand, and the ink pools on the parchment, forming shifting, random shapes that almost look like accusing eyes. My sanctum, my only refuge in this uncaring universe, has become a mirror of my mind. The warp is no longer something I visit. It has followed me home. The isolation is no longer a choice. It is a necessity. How could I explain this? Who could possibly understand? To speak of it would be to be declared a heretic, a mutant tainted beyond redemption. My house would be censured, my name struck from the records, and I would be handed over to the Inquisition for a painful, protracted, and ultimately pointless dissection. I am utterly, completely alone with this burgeoning horror. A soft, polite chime echoes through the chamber, making me jump. The vox panel by the door flashes with a soft amber light. A direct summons from the rogue trader. I stare at it, my heart a tired, overworked pump, hammering against my ribs. To refuse is unthinkable. To accept is to risk exposing myself, to let another person into this contaminated space. But Caskian Vorn is not a man who tolerates being ignored. With a trembling hand, I press the acceptance rune. The doors hiss open, and Vorn strides in. He is the epitome of the Imperial elite. Tall, broad-shouldered, his face a handsome stern mask, partially covered by subtle, golden augmetics that trace the lines of his cheekbones. His uniform is immaculate, a deep crimson brocade with polished brass buttons. He carries with him an air of absolute, unshakable confidence, and the scent of expensive, imported amasec. He stops a respectful 10 paces from me, his eyes scanning the chamber, but not quite settling on my shrouded form. His gaze is that of a man surveying his assets. "A magnificent translation, Lord Navigator," he says, his voice smooth and resonant. We arrived with minimal chronological deviation. The ship's machine spirit is content. "My compliments on your skill." "It is my function, Lord Captain," I rasp, my voice dry and unused. I keep myself in the deepest shadows of my throne, praying he doesn't notice the damp patch on the wall behind me, or the tear of glass on the desk that seems to pulse with a faint, malevolent light. The scent of ozone and decay feels thick enough to choke on, but Vorn gives no sign he notices it. His sense is perhaps dulled by his own expensive perfume. "Indeed," he clasps his hands behind his back. "We have located the source of the Archaeotech signal, a dead world, orbited by the shattered remains of a pre-imperial space station. We will begin salvage operations at once. I expect we shall remain in system for several standard weeks. You may rest. Your duties will not be required until we are ready to depart." He speaks of rest as if it were a commodity I could simply choose to acquire. He cannot see the constant, silent war being waged within these walls, within my very skull. As he speaks, I see it. Over his shoulder, just for a second, a single black feather drifts down through the air, impossibly slow, before vanishing a hand's breadth from the floor. My breath catches. I must have made a sound, a slight gasp, because Vorn's perfect brow furrows slightly. "Is something amiss, Lord Navigator?" he asks, his tone shifting from magnanimous employer to sharp-eyed inquisitor. "The residue of the Immaterium." I force the words out, the lie tasting like ash. "It lingers. It will pass." Vorn nods, accepting the explanation without question. Why wouldn't he? It fits within his limited, practical understanding of my craft. He sees me as a temperamental, vital piece of equipment that needs to be placated. He cannot conceive that the equipment is breaking, that the horrors it is designed to navigate are leaking out into his reality. "Of course," he says, his congenial mask back in place. "Rest well, Tiberian. The golden path has served my family for 1,000 years. I trust it will continue to do so." He turns and leaves, the doors hissing shut behind him, sealing me back in my tomb. The encounter, so brief, so mundane, has left me utterly drained. He used my given name, a calculated gesture of intimacy, a reminder of the ancient compacts between our houses. 1,000 years. He thinks that is a long time. My service to his line is but a chapter in the long, grim chronicle of my life. He speaks of trust, but what he trusts is a lie. He trusts the shrouded figure, the powerful navigator of House Vess. He does not know that Tiberius Vess is dying, and something else, something born of shattered glass and solidified despair, is taking his place. I look around my sanctum, the tear of glass on the desk, the weeping stain on the wall, the phantom whispers that are now so constant I barely notice them. Vorn saw none of it. He saw a dimly lit room and an eccentric ancient mutant. The warp stain is mine alone. It is a cancer of the soul, and its symptoms are only visible to the afflicted. The transformation is accelerating, and the isolation is now complete. I am no longer a navigator who looks into the warp. I am a nascent gateway, a living wound in reality, and my own sanctum has become the first patch of imperial soil to be annexed by the hell that I, and I alone, can see. The weeks we spent in orbit around that dead world were the longest of my life. My sanctum, once a refuge of ordered silence, became a canvas for the Imperium's artistry. The weeping stain on the wall spread like a black mold, its rivulets carving paths in the ancient wood that looked unsettlingly like weeping eyes. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were a chorus, a choir of every soul I had ever watched perish in the void, singing my name in a tone of mournful accusation. The air grew cold, carrying a perpetual scent of static and shattered memories. More objects appeared on my desk, my shelves, my floor. A single child-sized glove made of rotting silk, a tarnished silver locket that would not open, yet felt warm to the touch. Each one was a relic of a failure I had locked away in the deepest vaults of my mind, now given form and laid before me like offerings at a tomb. The angel was no longer a fleeting glimpse. At times, I would turn, and it would be there, standing in the corner of the room, a tall, silent silhouette of obsidian wings and mirrored emptiness. It never moved. It never spoke. It simply watched me, its presence an absolute pressure on my soul, reflecting my own spiraling despair back at me in suffocating waves. I ceased eating. I ceased sleeping. I merely sat in my threadbare throne, a prisoner in my own skull, watching my last bastion of reality crumble into a personal hell. The barrier was gone. There was no longer a distinction between the memories in my head and the phantoms in my room. The warp stain was not a mark upon me. It was me. My soul had become a permeable membrane, and the tide of the Immaterium was seeping through. I knew with the chilling certainty of a prophet reading the final page of a holy text what would happen on the next jump. When I opened my warp eye, I would not be a window looking out. I would be a door swinging open, and the angel, my personal, beautiful demon, would step through into the ship, and with it, the symphony of madness would begin for all 10,000 souls aboard. Then it came. The polite, soft chime of the voxlink, the summons. A soft amber light pulsing like a patient heart. Vorn was ready to leave. He had his treasure, his hold filled with prescribed archaeotech that would likely damn him in the eyes of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and he was eager to be on his way. For him, it was the end of a profitable venture. For me, it was the final curtain. They would bring the ship's sanctioned psychers, perhaps even the astropath. They would touch my mind and recoil screaming, their own sanity shattered by the raw chaos churning within me. I would be exposed. I, Tiberius Vess, 9th of my line, would end my days in an Inquisition black cell. My name a curse upon my house for all time. My duty, the only thing that had given my impossibly long life any semblance of meaning, would end in failure and disgrace. Or I could accept. I could walk to the bridge, strap myself into that gilded cage, and open my eye. I could become the doom of the Gilded Damnation, the architect of a new ghost ship to haunt the void, its crew driven to murderous insanity by the song of shattering glass. 10,000 souls screaming my name alongside the choir that already haunted my waking moments. Another failure, the grandest and most terrible of them all, to be laid at my feet for eternity. A third path unfolded in my mind, a path not of victory or survival, but of purpose. A path illuminated not by the Emperor's golden light, but by the cold, dark reflection from the angel's face. The warp stain was a part of me. The angel was a part of me. The hell in my sanctum was a part of me. I could not fight it. I could not cure it. But I could use it. The entity in the warp knew my fears, my regrets, my every misstep. But in knowing me so completely, it also knew my strengths. It knew every current, every tide, every secret pathway I had ever navigated. It saw the sea of souls through the lens of my 3 millennia of experience. To embrace it, just for a moment, would be to see the warp with a clarity no navigator had ever possessed. A clarity born of utter despair and absolute knowledge. I could plot a course so pure, so perfect, it would be a scar of order carved through the heart of chaos. A final, flawless act of navigation. And as the ship made that perfect translation, I would ensure the door I opened would be sealed shut behind it forever. My sanctum was the heart of the infection. The Gellerfield projector, the very device that held reality together, hummed with unimaginable power directly beneath my throne. A conduit, an anchor. If the anchor is raised, the ship is cast adrift. If the anchor is obliterated in a blaze of psychic fire, the chain snaps and the ship is thrown free. It is my function, Lord Captain. This, I realized, was my final function. To become the monster, and then to unmake myself and the monster with me. To save them all from the horror I had become. It is a mercy I will grant them with my own damnation. I rose from my throne. The movement was no longer that of a frail ancient man. It was deliberate, imbued with a terrible calm. The angel stood by the door, its mirrored face showing me not my past failures, but a vision of a ship, the Gilded Damnation, emerging clean and whole into the starlight of a safe harbor. It showed me my purpose. It was not tempting me. It was simply showing me the outcome of my choice. I walked past it, the cold aura of its presence washing over me like a final absolution. I did not need my shrouded robes or my hulking servitors. I pressed the rune, and the doors to my sanctum hissed open, spilling the chill and the scent of ozone into the corridor for the last time. My journey to the bridge was a funeral procession of one. I saw the crew flatten themselves against the walls, but this time their fear seemed distant, irrelevant. They were ghosts, shadows in a world I was already leaving. I reached the Navigator's spire and entered my throne. The clamps and needles felt like a lover's embrace. I was home. Caskian Vorn's voice was a faint echo from another reality. Lord Navigator, chart a course for the Cygnus Reach. Make haste. I gave the psychic assent. The lights dimmed. The starfield began to bleed. The Gellerfield hummed to life. A fragile skin of reality I was about to puncture from the inside. I reached out with my mind, not to the ship's systems, but down into the roaring heart of the projector beneath me. I held its power in my psychic grasp, a sun of pure order and stability. Then I turned my attention inward, to the angel, to the roiling chaos that now defined my soul. I did not shut it out. I invited it in. I opened my warp eye. There was no scream. There was only a perfect, terrible silence. The angel and I were one. The warp was not an ocean I was sailing. It was the blood in my veins. Through its mirrored eyes, I saw it all. The currents, the tides, the pathways of fate and time laid bare like the nerves of a flensed corpse. I saw the golden path, a single shimmering thread of absolute certainty leading to the Cygnus Reach. With a single effortless act of will, I laid the ship upon it. The journey would be instantaneous, perfect, my magnum opus. My final testament is almost complete. The ink from my quill no longer seems black, but shines with a bruised violet light. The parchment feels thin, like cooling embers. As the Gilded Damnation hurtles along the path I have forged, I am pulling on the anchor. I am drawing the raw power of the Geller field up into my throne, into myself. I am feeding the sun of reality to the black hole of my soul. The fusion of order and chaos will be my apotheosis and my oblivion. The angel's song is no longer a lament. It is a triumphant welcome. The screaming outside my sanctum has stopped. The pain in my bones is gone. There is only the light, the beautiful, terrible light of a dying star being born in the heart of my cage. My eye is open, and for the first time, I see.